Hey everybody, it's Keith. So this is my Axis MB200 mini bike. It's basically the same thing as the Coleman 200EX and a lot of other Colemans as far as the engine setup goes. So I see a lot of people modify this. This is the throttle screw here. So when you turn the throttle, it limits it. It hits that screw right there. It can't go any further. So people are like, oh, I can just back the screw out here and make it go faster. Well, the problem is, as you probably already know, is they tack weld that screw right here. So what I see a lot of people do is they come in here with a Dremel or whatever, they just cut the screw off on the back side so you have more travel here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to modify it by just cutting that weld so you can adjust the screw, so you can still have a throttle limiter if you want it for your kids or whatever, or then you can back it off for yourself or whoever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all this throttle linkage off to work on the bench, and it's super simple. So first thing I did is I loosened this already, this cable screw here. This is what tightens the cable down. So you want to hold this bottom piece with a 10mm wrench. Use a Phillips screwdriver right here to back this off. The next thing you're going to do is you can use a Phillips screw here, but it's not a very good one. It slips real easily. So it's actually also a 7mm. So we're going to loosen that. Well, gotta get the right socket on there. I had an 8mm on there. So there's a 7mm. So I'm gonna try to hold this while I do this. So I'm gonna loosen that. And you don't have to take that all the way off. So now that I've loosened, I'm gonna take this cable all the way off. That spring might go flying, but it's okay. So I'm gonna take that cable off and the spring off. So now that all that's holding it on to the engine is this 8mm screw up here behind the gas tank, and right here as well. And you know what? I just told y'all 8mm. Yeah, it's 8mm. I was getting ahead of myself. I thought I told y'all the wrong thing. So I'm gonna take those off. This has never been taken apart, so they're a little tight. I have a little Loctite or whatever on them. I'm holding the phone with my left hand and working on my right hand, so excuse me if it's not perfect. So now we're going to take the one behind the gas tank off right here. Once you break it loose, you can just do it by your fingertips. So it's almost out. There we go. Forgot to say too, you gotta take this spring off so you can see one of the governor springs there. So see if I can take this off with one hand. I'm gonna set this down. I consider myself decent, but not that good. All right, got that spring off. Okay. So you can see right where my thumb is there, where it's tack welded. So I'm gonna get my Dremel tool set up here, and then I will come back and show you how to cut that loose, where you can actually still adjust the screw. Okay, so I got this up in a vise. If you didn't have a vise, you could just use some clamps or whatever. Clamp it to a table somehow, kind of just play around with it. So you can see there's the screw that we're trying to get loose. There's a weld, so I'm just gonna go right there, straight on the edge of this panhead screw, with a Dremel tool cut-off wheel, thin one. I'm just gonna go right there and just cut through that weld and see what happens. I'm not gonna be able to do it on camera because I'm holding this phone with my left hand, trying to cut with my right hand, but I think you get the idea. I'll come back here in just a second and show you if I was successful or not. Just gonna cut it right there. All right, so I was successful. I cut through that weld. I was attaching this screw to this throttle linkage. You can see it didn't, I had to cut kind of the edge of that pan head part of the screw off as well to get it to turn, but it worked. If you wanted to, you could buy a new screw. Looks like it's an M6 by 1 thread pitch. Not 100% sure, but I'm not too worried about it. It's gonna work for its purpose like it is. So as you can see now, that throttle limiting screw turns in and out. So now you could, if you had a kid riding, you could max it out, limit the throttle. And if you wanted to go a little faster, or you had an older kid, you can back it out a little bit. So that's all there is to it. You know, also you can buy this whole throttle linkage without a welded screw on there on Amazon for like 15 bucks or less, I think. But let's face it, we bought mini bikes because they're cheap. So if you can do a free mod, if you already have the tools, why not? You know, I will say this is a little loose, so I might be a little curious if the engine vibration is going to make this back out. So I might put a little blue Loctite on it. With that, I'd still be able to, you should still be able to turn it, but it should, you know, maybe just make it a little more resistant. Or you could get the right size nut to put on this screw before you screw it in and use it like a jam nut. So once you had it to where you wanted it, you could tighten the nut down and it wouldn't move. So that's it. Hopefully this helps you out. And, you know, it takes an extra 10 minutes or not even that long to take all of this off to cut it like this, rather than just cut the screw off. And this way it's adjustable. Hopefully this helps you. Have a good night. So one more thing I'm going to show you. I'm putting this back together. So when you put the throttle cable back on, you want to, you know, obviously clamp the crimp down in this little clamp here on the throttle cable housing. When you put this through, you want to kind of pull that to where there's no slack in it when you tighten it down. Also, kind of another little trick, this spring here, a lot of times it's real stiff. So you can cut 3 or 4 coils out of it to make it a little less stiff. Or you can actually, and I actually have one on the way for this one, you can take this spring out and you can put an original Honda spring that goes from here to here in it, and it makes it not so hard to pull the throttle. I was gonna try to show you on this mini bike, but let me take this off real quick and I'll show you. Shouldn't take just a couple seconds. This is my Coleman. It's well, you're not gonna be able to see it on this one either. You'll get the idea if you just know that it's just a spring that goes between here and here, and it hooks into here and hooks into here. And I'll type the part number for that Honda spring in the description. So if you add that, you'll actually take this spring completely out, and you'll have a little bit easier throttle, and it'll still return everything just how it's supposed to.